There are just three airlines that control over 50% of the U.S. domestic market, and they've been around since the early 1900s.
United States airlines like American, Delta, and United have always chased the best. So when Boeing introduced the 777X, it seemed like the perfect match, an aircraft built for the future. But then everything changed. Delays dragged on, technical issues piled up, and now, years later, not a single U.S. airline has a 777X in its fleet. That doesn't mean they've been silent, though. In fact, all three airlines recently made major announcements regarding their plans for this plane, while Boeing continues making steady progress towards certification, with recent crosswind testing at LBB marking a significant step forward. When Boeing first announced the 777X in 2013, it felt like the beginning of a new era in long-distance flying. Airlines were excited, engineers were proud, and passengers were hopeful. Building on the trusted 777, Boeing promised a jet that would dominate long-haul travel for a new generation, faster, cheaper to operate, better for the environment, and more comfortable for travelers. The aircraft was originally slated to enter service in 2020, yet here we are in 2025, and the 777X still hasn't carried a single paying passenger, with its new delivery target pushed to 2026. To understand why, it helps to look at Boeing's design approach. Instead of building a brand new jet from scratch, Boeing opted to evolve the original 777 by integrating the best elements of the 787 Dreamliner. That meant adding composite materials for strength and lightness, equipping it with larger carbon fiber wings, updating cockpit systems, and refining aerodynamics for greater efficiency. On paper, it was a smart and cost-effective strategy. Why reinvent the wheel when you can take something proven and upgrade it? But this kind of derivative design is risky, a lesson Boeing had already learned with the troubled 737 MAX. For the 777X, the problems weren't immediate safety concerns, but rather a cascade of engineering, production, and testing delays that kept pushing the timeline further. Still, the aircraft remains a marvel of design. Among its standout features are folding wingtips, a first for commercial aviation, allowing the jet's massive 235-foot wingspan to provide better fuel efficiency in flight while folding up on the ground to fit standard airport gates. Then there are its engines, the GE9X, built by General Electric, the largest jet engines ever constructed, each with a fan diameter wider than the fuselage of a 737. Designed to be quieter, cleaner, and more efficient, each produces over 100,000 pounds of thrust while reducing fuel burn. Combined with the aircraft's sleek aerodynamic profile, the 777X promises 20% lower fuel use per seat compared to the older 777-300ER, making it one of the most ambitious and technically advanced jets ever built. That's a huge deal for airlines because fuel is one of their biggest costs. But fuel savings weren't the only attraction. The passenger cabin of the 777X was designed with major upgrades. Wider cabins, improved air pressure, higher humidity, and larger windows, similar to what travelers love about the Dreamliner, were all included to reduce jet lag and make long-haul flights feel less like a cramped metal tube and more like a comfortable room in the sky. Airlines had even maintained a 10-abreast seating layout while still giving passengers more personal space. But building something this advanced wasn't just about dreams. It was about execution, and that's where Boeing ran into trouble. From the very start, problems piled up. One major misstep was the company's attempt to use automated robots to assemble sections of the fuselage. The idea was to make production faster and more precise, but the robots kept failing, misaligning parts, and creating more problems than they solved. Boeing eventually abandoned the automation and reverted to manual assembly, which only caused more delays. At the same time, production at the new composite wing facility in Everett, Washington, struggled to reach full capacity, adding months, eventually years, to the program's timeline. Then came engine troubles. The GE9X engines, though groundbreaking, weren't flawless. During testing, they faced performance shortfalls and even suffered a high-profile incident where an engine was damaged in transit. This forced GE to fix multiple issues before the engines could be certified. Without engines, of course, the plane couldn't fly. The situation worsened in mid-2024 when Boeing discovered a structural issue with the part that mounts the engines to the wings. A faulty engine mount is a massive safety risk because if it fails, the engine could detach mid-air, something that tragically happened in the 1979 American Airlines Flight 191 crash. Boeing found similar flaws on 2 other test aircraft, further shaking confidence in the program. As a result, the first delivery was delayed once again, this time pushed back to 2026. All this unfolded while Boeing was also grappling with a machinist strike that slowed production even more. What had started as an exciting, innovative project was turning into a nightmare of setbacks. Customers grew increasingly frustrated. Emirates, the largest buyer with over 200 orders, openly criticized Boeing, saying the delays were costing them money and forcing them to keep older jets flying longer than planned. Other airlines canceled or deferred their orders. Yet, in a surprising twist, none of these cancellations came from the 3 largest U.S. carriers, American, Delta, and United, who had still not ordered a single 777X. The lack of interest in the Boeing 777X from American Airlines, Delta Airlines, and United Airlines is striking. The 777X was designed to be the crown jewel of Boeing's long-haul aircraft lineup, and international giants like Emirates, Lufthansa, and Qatar Airways placed massive orders soon after its launch. But in the United States, the reaction was completely different. None of the big 3, American, Delta, or United, have purchased a single 777X as of 2025. That silence speaks volumes. To understand why, it's important to look at how U.S. airlines operate. Unlike carriers in the Middle East or Europe, which often rely on a single massive hub like Dubai or London, American Airlines use a multi-hub strategy. Delta, for example, operates out of Atlanta, Detroit, Minneapolis, and Salt Lake City. United uses Chicago, Denver, Houston, and Newark, and American relies on Dallas-Fort Worth, Charlotte, and Miami, among others. Because the U.S. is so large and geographically spread out, no single hub dominates like Dubai or Frankfurt, which makes it harder to fill giant aircraft. The 777X can carry around 400 passengers in a typical 3-class setup, but filling that many seats consistently is a challenge. U.S. passengers also value flexibility, preferring multiple daily flights on smaller planes rather than one massive departure. This makes giant aircraft less practical for domestic and even many international routes. Seasonality adds another problem. Demand spikes in summer and holidays but dips sharply in off-peak months, making a 400-seat aircraft risky if it's flying half-empty. Instead, U.S. airlines prefer slightly smaller, long-range jets like the Airbus A350-900 and Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Delta has invested in both A350s and 787s. United has leaned heavily into its 787 fleet for Asia and Europe, and American has focused on smaller Dreamliner models like the 787-9 and 787-8, which fit better with their route networks. All of these choices reflect a preference for flexibility over size. Geography also plays a major role. Unlike hubs in Doha, Dubai, or Istanbul, the United States is positioned as a global crossroads. Most passengers flying into the U.S. are ending their journeys there rather than connecting onward, reducing the need for supersized jets. Finally, airport infrastructure and immigration policies make matters worse. In the U.S., there's no such thing as sterile international transit, meaning every connecting passenger has to clear customs and immigration. That discourages airlines from trying to turn U.S. airports into global transfer hubs, further reducing demand for massive aircraft like the 777X. This adds time, costs, and complications. In Europe or Asia, passengers can stay within international zones at airports, making quick transfers between long-haul flights. But in the U.S., this is simply not possible, which means American airports don't function well as international transit hubs. This makes funneling thousands of people through one giant aircraft less practical. On top of that, big delays cost airlines money. Carriers plan their fleets years in advance, so if they were expecting a new aircraft in 2021 but instead receive it in 2026, their entire schedule is thrown off. That's one reason some airlines, like Emirates, have demanded compensation from Boeing for the long wait. American carriers, already cautious, prefer to hold back rather than gamble on another uncertain aircraft timeline. In the meantime, Airbus has taken advantage of this hesitation. Its A350-1000 offers similar performance to the 777X, but is already in service with many airlines. Delta, For example, has ordered 20 A350-1000s to fill the role the 777X might have played, and the A350 family's range of sizes gives airlines more flexibility. This adaptability has made Airbus more appealing to U.S. carriers who don't want to commit to one massive plane with limited use cases. That said, the 777XS story in America isn't completely over. There's one sector where it may still shine: cargo. At the moment, the most likely first American customers of the Boeing 777X aren't United, Delta, or American Airlines, but cargo giants FedEx and UPS. These companies operate very differently from passenger airlines. Instead of juggling peak and off-peak travel seasons, ticket sales, and passenger preferences, they focus on one thing: efficiency. They want to move as much cargo as possible, as far as possible, while spending the least on fuel and maintenance. On paper, the 777X fits that model perfectly. The freighter version, called the 777-8F, has already been attracting attention. Boeing officially launched it in January 2022, with deliveries expected between late 2027 and early 2028. While this model still faces flight testing and certification, it doesn't have to meet the same passenger safety scrutiny. Plus, Boeing can apply lessons from the passenger 777XS testing to speed things along. It also helps that the earliest 777F is already one of the most trusted cargo aircraft in the world. For FedEx and UPS, a bigger, newer version with lower operating costs is an easy sell. FedEx in particular could gain a lot, as its 777F fleet already connects the U.S. with major markets like China, India, and Europe. But with e-commerce expanding and global shipping demand rising, more capacity and better fuel efficiency will be essential. If the 777-8F delivers on its promise of 25% better fuel savings than older freighters, it could become a key part of their fleet. UPS, with its massive Louisville hub, may also turn to the 777-8F as it grows routes to Europe and Asia. Cargo may not be glamorous, but it is a steady engine for the aviation world. And in that role, the 777X may find a strong home long before passengers ever set foot on it. As for the passenger version, the big question remains: will the 777X ever fly for United, American, or Delta? The short answer is yes, probably. But the long answer is not anytime soon. United Airlines is the most likely to eventually adopt it, since it already operates a large fleet of 777-300As, which the 777X is designed to replace. Many of those aircraft will need to be retired in the early 2030s. However, United also has a massive 787 Dreamliner fleet covering many of the same long-haul routes the 777X would fly. Their challenge is that they don't need a larger plane right now. While they are expanding international service, most of their new routes can be handled with a 787-9 or 787-10, making the 777X more of a future consideration than an immediate need. Still, as travel demand grows, especially between the U.S. and Asia or the Middle East, United may eventually turn to the 777X. If it happens, it will likely be after 2028, once the aircraft is fully certified, tested, and proven in real-world use. American Airlines, on the other hand, has been more cautious. They already passed on the 777X once. Back in 2018, American Airlines chose not to buy the 777X or even the 787-10. Instead, they focus on the 787-9, which is small and better suited for their current long-haul routes. Like United, American has no real reason to jump into a larger plane right now. Many of their international flights are to Europe, South America, and some part of Asia, which can be served by medium to large aircraft without the need for 400-seat giants. But by 2030, some of their older 777-200s will be due for replacement. That might be the moment American reconsiders a 777X, especially if fuel prices rise or long-distance travel becomes more concentrated again. Then there's Delta Airlines, which has historically leaned toward Airbus. Delta has made big bets on the A350-900 and even ordered A350-1000s, a direct competitor to the 777X. Their decision likely shows two things. First, Delta prefers to operate aircraft that are already flying and proven. And second, Airbus offers a variety of plane sizes in the same family, giving Delta more flexibility in planning routes. While it's not impossible that Delta might one day consider the 777X, it's far less likely unless Airbus can't meet their needs in the future. For now, Delta seems happy with its current fleet mix and isn't likely to change direction. So, what does this mean for the future? Well, if things go smoothly for Boeing from 2026 to 2028, and if the 777-9 performs well across the Atlantic and Pacific, then we may see the first U.S. passenger orders shortly after that. These orders would likely be for replacement, not expansion, meant to swap out older 777s and 747s that are reaching the end of their lives. In the end, the Boeing 777X still has a future in the U.S., just not the one that was imagined a decade ago. It may not arrive in time for the 2026 travel season, and it may not launch with fireworks and headlines, but it will get there. Whether it rolls onto the tarmac under a FedEx logo or lands in New York with United's colors, it's only a matter of time before this advanced aircraft finds its place in the American sky. Well, what do you think about the U.S. Airlines' decision to not order the Boeing 777X? Let us know in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. And don't forget to click the next video shown on your screen. You'll enjoy it.